Grabe te, sobrang init naman. Free trial na ba ito ng impyerno?
Are these weather shifts something that needs to be disregarded or ignored? Or something that needs immediate action? Typhoons, floods, heat waves, food insecurity, rise in sea levels caused by melting glaciers, and the increase of the spread of diseases are some of the alarming impacts of climate change. And each year, it is becoming extreme.
Ma'am Sol, what is climate change?
Based on my previous knowledge, climate change refers to the way our climate suddenly changes from each part of the globe.
Climate change is a long-term shift in temperature and weather patterns.
Climate change is a sudden change in the temperature around the world where regardless of what continent we experience that. For example, drought, change in weather pattern. Okay, and aside from that, it is also a another factor for disease and virus exchange. Okay, at the same time, we also experience increase in the temperature and increase in water levels around the world.
As stated by the United Nations, the primary cause of climate change is the changes in the sun's activity and large volcanic eruptions. However, traced back in the 1800s, it is primarily because of human activity.
Hala! Tayo pala may kasalanan!
Yes, we are responsible of climate change. But don't worry, because climate scientists already have a solution.
Ma'am Sol, i-share mo na yan!
It's in our hands.
Yung isa pang co-author ng Climate Change Act.
Number 9729, based on the reconciled version of the Senate Bill number 2583 and House Bill number 5982 entitled, An Act Mainstreaming Climate Change into Government Policy Formulations, establishing the framework strategy and program on climate change, creating for this purpose the Climate Change Commission and for other purposes.
Republic Act No. 9729, also known as the Climate Change Act of 2009, was enacted on October 23, 2009, and was principally authored and sponsored by Senator Lauren Legarda. It is an environmental law which aims to integrate climate change into government policy formulation across all levels, focusing on development plans and poverty reduction strategies. Further, the law also established the Climate Change Commission as the lead body responsible for creating and implementing the framework strategy and program on climate change and to oversee these efforts. It effectively acknowledges the country's vulnerability to climate change and encourages synergy between climate change actions and disaster risk reduction strategies and the need for adaptation measures which aligns with the principles of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change.
Hi guys, habol ko lang. The Climate Change Act of 2009 is a substantive law that establishes climate change policies and responsibilities, but it does not address any court procedures. Furthermore, it is also a political and environmental law as it applies to government policies and is concerned with climate change protection and disaster risk reduction. Finally, the Act is considered a principal law because it established the framework for climate change governance. However, it was later amended by the Republic Act 10174, which established the People's Survival Fund to fund climate change adoption programs. See you later.
Since climate change is a worldwide emergency, the Philippines is one of the countries most vulnerable to its impact. Our country strives to increase its resilience by implementing the Republic Act No.
9729.
or the Climate Change Act of 2009, authored by Senator Lauren Legarda to aid in mitigating climate change. This act is special as it aims to integrate disaster risk reduction measure, establish climate change commission, and formulate framework strategy on climate change to serve as a basis for a program. Meanwhile, the local government unit and other agencies may adopt transform, or change these based on the response to climate change drivers. The Climate Change Act of 2009 is consistent to the provision of the 1987 Constitution. This act mirrors our constitutional commitment to safeguarding the environment and upholding the Filipinos' welfare in the challenge of climate change. The alignment of this act with the articles and provisions of the Constitution not only addresses the urgency of protecting our environment, but also highlights the vulnerable sector deeply affected by climate induced disasters and the spread of communicable diseases due to extreme weather events. Furthermore, this act is compliant with several other Philippine laws, which aims not just to protect the environment, but also to improve the disaster risk reduction and public health. Noong nakaraang taon ay binayo tayo ng 6 na sunod-sunod na tropical cyclones. 3 dito ay nasa kategorya ng super typhoon na naging dahilan ng malawakang pagbaha, pagguho ng lupa at daluyong. Ngayong taon, bago pa man ideklara ng Department of Science and Technology or DOST ang pag-uumpisa ng tag-init ngayong buwan ng Marso, ay ramdam na natin ang maalinsangang panahon at naitatalang matataas na heat indices. Ayon sa pag-asa, ay mas mataas pa ang ating mararanasang init sa pag-uumpisa ng El Nino. Ngunit, kaya pa ba nating pagtagumpayan ang mga delubyong ating mararanasan sa mga susunod na buwan at taon? United Nations once said, "We face a huge challenge but already know many solutions." Thus, implementing the Republic Act number 9729 in the Philippines addresses the public interest or public good in combating the impacts of climate change, which will benefit both the current and future generation. The act aims to improve the resilience of vulnerable populations by strengthening disaster preparedness, lowering climate-related health risk, conserving the ecosystem, and promoting the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals to remedy the multifaceted challenges of climate change to secure our country's future.
Did you know? This law yields positive impact on our well-being and on our country as well. Let me explain. This act established the Climate Change Commission, which help our nation to enhance climate resiliency, update our national adaptation plan, and nationally determined contribution. Now let's see ang ilan sa mga nakapaloob sa ating National Adaptation Plan. Ito ang mga focal points for adaptation action. Agriculture, fisheries, and food security. Water, health, ecosystem, and diversity. Cultural heritage, population displacement, and migration, land use, and human settlement. Livelihood and industries, energy, transport, and communication. Bukod dito, tinataguyod din ng batas na ito ang nationally determined contribution sa ilalim ng Paris Agreement na naglalayo na i-reduce ang greenhouse gas emission. And nakikita rin dito ang kabuang framework ng ating bansa para mabigyang aksyon ang mga pagkukulang o dapat pang i-improve na plano ng bawat sektor na sakop nito. However, ang totoong tagumpay ay nakasalalay sa ating cooperation. To enhance its full potential ng batas na ito, lahat, including ang gobyerno, businesses at ayong mamamayan ay dapat magtulungan. Collective effort will lead us to a sustainable climate-resilient future.
Laws shape climate action, but they also come with boundaries that ensure accountability and effectiveness. So, let's break down some key restrictions and what they mean in practice. First, imagine a team of experts leading a critical mission, but instead of making the tough calls themselves, they hand the reins over to someone else. That wouldn't make sense, right? That's why the commissioners of the CCC cannot delegate their authority to representatives. While the law provides a framework for climate action, the actual implementation falls to the executive branch, with the court stepping in only when necessary to ensure compliance. A good example is Segovia versus Climate Change Commission, which highlights the distinct roles different branches of government play in climate governance. This setup ensures that key decisions come directly from those with the expertise and responsibility to act. Second, of course, even the best plans need funding to work. Donations and grants play a major role in climate initiatives, but with strict conditions. These funds must be used for climate related projects like research, advocacy, and adaptation programs. What they can cover? Administrative expenses or personal salaries. This safeguards ensures that every peso donated makes a direct impact, preventing misallocation and ensuring resources go where they're needed most. Third, climate action isn't just a national issue. It also happens at the local level. That's why LGUs are required to align their local climate change action plans with the National Climate Change Action Plan. This coordination helps create a unified approach, but it also means LGUs must navigate procedural requirements before getting projects approved. While this ensures consistency, it can sometimes slow down much needed local initiatives. Lastly, a well written law is only as powerful as the resources backing it. While the Climate Change Act provides an initial operating fund of 50 million pesos, future funding depends on the approval under the General Appropriations Act. This means that without continued legislative support, climate programs may struggle to sustain momentum. Securing funding isn't just a one time effort, it's an ongoing challenge that requires political backing and public pressure. So, to wrap things up, these limitations exist to promote transparency, accountability, and consistency. But while they help ensure proper oversight, they also introduce hurdles, from funding constraints to bureaucratic red tape. Understanding these boundaries allows us to better navigate climate governance and advocate for stronger, more effective policies. Because at the end of the day, laws alone don't drive change. It's how we implement and sustain them that truly makes the difference.
Oh, hey guys. Sa lahat ng nasabi nila kanina, do you think that this law is good or bad? Well, the Climate Change Act of 2009 is generally a good and beneficial law. Why? Because it simply wanted to protect and safeguard our environment, to reduce risk-related climate change consequences. Well, since I'm fond of history, let's take a look back. Since the Industrial Revolution, the period of scientific and technological development, until today, the environment in the global community has drastically suffered. This law ensures that the climate change is brought to the forefront of the national policy to address the global crisis. The Philippines and its citizens, no doubt, need the law. Given our geographic location's vulnerability to the increasing climate-related disasters, such as floods, unusually powerful typhoons, increasing severity of drought, fires, climate-related diseases and illness, damage to ecosystems, and biodiversity loss that affects the country's environment and economy. This is why the law is important for building resilience against these events. With the help of this law, accompanied by the establishment of the Climate Change Commission, it will become the foundation for climate-related policies and actions not just across the government sectors, but also, and hopefully, including the private sectors, ensuring that policymakers will consider their action plans and programs relating to climate change. I hope we take responsibility and work together for a greener, more resilient world, because when we act today, we ensure and we secure a better tomorrow.
Filipinos are as pliant as a bamboo. Other countries laud us as we still smile, even if countless calamities test us. But what makes us known for is our bayanihan spirit during trying times. However, we should not ignore climate change, as we do not have planet B. Thus, we should cooperate with the efforts imposed by the government in mitigating the climate change, because the future of our world is in our hands.